Okay, in this mimer, the Alter Rebbe starts to talk about the second level called Sovev called Almin, and it references the story with the Neil, where there was a revelation of godliness, which the Neil was able to comprehend, but those around him weren't yet. They were very shaken by it. So why were they shaken by it? Because it was a revelation of godliness that they weren't able to compartmentalize. How then did they experience it at all? So we talked about the idea of mazel. Now, mazel means that a person's neshama is not fully contained within their humanity. There's an aspect of their neshama that remains detached from their humanity. And that characteristic, called the mazel, does have an impact on the aspect of the neshama that's not invested in the body. But without the preface of Torah study and yirah, as we will describe, there's a disconnect, or as a broken connection between them. So those who could not absorb the experience were shaken from their mazel that resulted in their physical collapse as a result of this experience. And this goes on to describe the role of yirah and the role of chachma. We know in Pirkei Avos it says, if there's no chachma, there's no yirah. If there's no yirah, there's no chachma. This represents two stages within yirah. The introductory level of yirah is fulfilled through the execution of the actual mitzvah observance. Do what you're told, fulfill the will of the king, make Hashem the authority. And this will give you the opportunity to then receive Torah. And through the understanding of Torah, it will take you to that more profound level that you will have a more deeper understanding of the level of godliness that is not able to otherwise be revealed to you. This answered an earlier question in the mimer, where we suggested, or we inquired, how is it, or why is it that we have a rule that if a person is studying Torah, he should not interrupt it to do a mitzvah as long as that mitzvah can be done by somebody else. Now, since, the source seems to suggest, the purpose of Torah study is to explain and nuance out the mitzvahs, so how could it be that doing the mitzvah is not overriding the Torah study? Yet we say that as long as someone else can do the mitzvah, you should keep studying Torah. But if someone else cannot do the mitzvah, then you should interrupt and you should do the mitzvah. So we explained that, again, it represents these different levels. The level of you doing the mitzvah is this introductory level of yirah, where you have to be engaged in order to execute this characteristic of God's authority. The level of Torah is that a person comes to this more profound, this deeper level, this yirah ilah, that is otherwise outside of the human life experience. And therefore, if someone else can do the mitzvah, you'll have that introductory level of yirah, and then you can have that higher level of Torah. If they can't, then you need to have that. You need to have that yirah that precedes the chachma. Then we went on to describe, as an analogy with a wedding, that when the bridegroom, the chassan, marries the kala in two ways. One is the chitzonius way, that he gives her the ring, which creates the legal bond. And then there's through the consummation, which creates the unity between them. And the same thing, we fulfill a closeness with Hashem through compliance, and we fulfill a closeness with Hashem through true unity. And we went on to describe that we are able to do this through the 7 weeks of Sfiras HaOmer, that ordinarily the midos are naturally inclined towards their animalistic impulse. And there needs to be a battle to overcome them, which is why you can't eat chametz on Pesach, because there's a susceptibility to that characteristic being siphoned off by the ungodly application of the midos through the 7 weeks of Sfira, where we bring sphera, brightness, into the omer, the quantity of barley, animal food. And thus we completely transform our midas and make them transparent only to godliness, and thus impervious to being hijacked away by animalistic character, so that we get to Shavuos, we have chametz, because now there's no longer any concern that this characteristic will be hijacked by the animalistic tendencies. This is why we describe it as the gift of the hand, because the hand suggests total compliance, in contrast to the gift of the heart, where there's still some degree of my own personal impulse. I like that, I want that, and so on. And therefore, Hashem tells us that we should, as an introduction to the Aseres HaDibros, that we should speak these words, that I am Hashem your God, that they should penetrate our true existence, as the second paragraph of the Shema tells us, that it is the product of mitzvah fulfillment and compliance.